Hi friends, welcome to part 3 of our calculated requested receipt date and ship date. In this episode, we will try to understand the details of how do we configure the purchase transport dates and how those configurations affect the receipt date calculations. We will also try to understand how the item coverage group need to be assigned for the site and warehouse in the release products so that the warehouse calendar also control the receipt date calculations. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel D365 Talks or follow my profile in LinkedIn. With that note, let's quickly jump into today's topic. We'll quickly jump into the topic, but I'll try to kind of show you what we have done in the part 2 because we'll make sure that the continuity is there. So I'll just try to reopen the same purchase order which we were using for the part 2 to showcase how do we configure the purchase transport days. So this was a purchase order which we were using in the part 2, and if you look at the delivery section, and the requested ship date and receipt date are primarily 27/6 because for the item we have actually configured the lead time as 6 days, and the receipt date was actually 19/6 plus 6 days, and also it has considered the vendor ship calendar because vendor is actually not shipping on the 25th and 26th, so he will be able to ship only on 27th, and that's why the requested ship date is 27/6. So now what we are primarily going to do is so we will see how the transport days configuration in Dynamics 365 help to calculate the receipt dates, and also we will see based on whatever the mode of delivery which is selected for the purchase order line, the user will be able to get the appropriate receipt dates. So that is something which we are going to see in today's video, right? Because transport days does not have any relevance in order to calculate your ship date, because the vendor is primarily shipping the material based on their operating or working days, and on what days they will be able to ship and the lead time. But the transport days is primarily used in order to calculate the receipt date, because what is the number of days which is primarily used to ship the material from vendor premises to your organizational specific warehouse premises. So there are primarily two configurations. First, we will try to understand about the purchase transport days. In order to configure your purchase transport days, all you have to do is so you have to navigate to Procurement and Sourcing module, Setup, and under Setup, under Distribution, you have a section called Purchase Transport Days. Just click on Purchase Transport Days, and this is a very simple form. This is not a very complex configuration. Anyone by navigating to this form will be able to configure it. But before to that, I've just missed one part that I need to kind of understand the location, because without which it is not possible for us to configure. The system captures the transport days and calculates it only if it finds a relevant match, which is very important for you to understand. So in this case, let's see what happens is like, so the address is actually USA Washington, and let me also check the vendor, because I'm not sure from where this is primarily shipped. I'm not sure about the default address, so I have to check that. So yeah, so the vendor premise is from Texas. I hope TX stands for Texas, USA to Washington. So we need to configure a transport days from Texas, USA to Washington. That's a configuration which we need to do, right? So let me, probably I'll keep this tab. I'm going to duplicate another tab. Yeah, I'll just configure the purchase transport days from Texas, USA to Washington, USA. I'm not sure first of all TX is Texas or not. Let me check it. So once you navigate to the purchase transport days form, click on new, and then all you have to do is, there are two sections here. One is the shipping point and the receiving point. Like I said, in this case, the shipping point is the vendor premise and the receiving point is your warehouse or the address what you have configured in the purchase order. And let's say then if it is from Texas, let's take, first of all I need to provide a country ID. So once we provide a country ID, then we need to provide the shipping state, and I hope the shipping state TX is Texas. Yeah, that's right, it's Texas. And then if you want, you can provide the city and zip code to make it more relevant. And it's not mandatory. it would suffice if you just provide the country, region and shipping state, and also the receiving country, region, also it is USA, and then the receiving state is Washington. Yep, it's Washington. And also in the general force tab, you have the option to provide the default transport days. Let's say the default transport days is I'm not sure how much time it generally takes to commute the material from Texas to Washington, but let's say I provide 4 days, right? So this is the default transport days which is primarily taken for shipping the material from Texas to Washington. Now in the other tab, I'll go back to the purchase order. So in the purchase order, what I will do is I'll just remove this line, and then I'll re-add the line. So when I re-add the line, I want the system to take the transport days and then calculate the receipt date, right? So let me add the line. So once if I give the item number as 1000, and by default, first of all, it has already calculated the lead time 4 days. Let me remove the line and then show it to you. The moment if I add the line, it has by default added 4 days, because in the transport days from the Texas to Washington, it is 4 days. And that's the reason the receipt date is actually taken as 4 days. And if I add the item number, and then for the item, it has to take the lead time, the vendor ship calendar, and also now it has considered the transport days which we have configured. So that's how the requested receipt date is now 1/7, right? And in the line level also, there is an option for us to capture the mode of delivery. Let's say you have shipments planned for three or four different lines. In that case, you have a different mode of delivery for each and every line. If that's the case, then you will be able to capture the mode of delivery for each and every line, and based on which your receipt dates will be automatically calculated. I'll quickly show you how to do that. So I'll go back to another tab. So this is the default transport days which will be picked by the system. If you have not enabled any mode of transport as a default type, otherwise always this is the days which will be picked by the system. Let's say if I add the mode of delivery, let's say the mode of delivery for truck, I say, let's say it is 4 days, and then for air, let's assume that it is a same day delivery. I'll just keep this as 0, and then I'll add one more mode of delivery, let's say rail, and for rail, let's say it takes 3 days, and I'll just keep air as the default mode of delivery, and then for any shipments which are sent from Texas to Washington, air is the default mode of delivery. And moment if I enable the default mode of delivery, you can see that the transport days is disabled. So always system picks the default value, but only if I enable, the user will be able to provide the default value which the transport days system has to consider. But let's say I'm enabling this, so whenever there is a shipment which is made from Texas to Washington, always the transport days is 0, because it's a same day delivery if it is made through air, right? Let me save this. Let me navigate to the other tab. And so I'll just remove this line, and then I'll add the line again. So I'll add the item number. So this case, now what it happens is it has picked the default transport mode of delivery as air. That's the reason the requested receipt date is 27/6, because the system assumes that we will be able to receive the material on the same day, and that's why there is no change in the date. But let's say if we are planning to change the mode of delivery, for some reason the vendor has not agreed to ship the material through air because of cost reasons, and he is willing to deliver the material using rail. The moment if I capture rail, obviously we configure 3 days for the mode of delivery rail, and that's the reason requested receipt date is calculated as 36. And let's say if we change it to truck, for truck we have actually configured 4 days, and that's how the date is now calculated as 1/7/2025, right? So this is how you will be able to control the receipt date calculations in Dynamics 365 for the purchase orders. And this is one configuration using which you will be able to do that. Another configuration is in the item, like I was discussing in the part 2, you need to select the appropriate item coverage if you want the warehouse calendars need to be considered based for receiving your materials. If warehouse calendars need to be considered, then all you have to do is under the plan section in the item coverage, you need to add the appropriate site and warehouse. I'll strongly recommend you to try this out, but I'll tell you how to do this. But you can start working on this if you are practicing in your demo instance. Let's say if you click on new, and you need to provide the site and warehouse. In this case it is 1 and 11, and also if you see the coverage group, by default it has picked REQ rec. So primarily from where this comes is, if you go to master planning, we already discussed about this in the master planning playlist. Primarily I'll ask you to check those videos. If you go to master planning parameter, there is an option for you to configure the general item coverage, the general coverage group. Under the general section, you can give the general coverage group. By default, if you have not configured any coverage group in the item, or so you can walk through this help text, which clearly says if it is not covered in the release product or item coverage branch, then this is the coverage group which will be picked by the system. Right, but let's say if I change this to some other value, auto, and then let me save this. I'll also tell you why I'm talking about this, because from the coverage group, the calendar will be picked by the system. And if I go back to the product information management, release products, and then if I try to add the coverage group again, so item coverage, you can see the coverage group is actually picked as auto. So let me delete this. Even if I create a new line, it will by default take the coverage group as auto. And let's say, so this is let's say if this is the coverage group which we want to assign, and then in the coverage group, each and every coverage group comes with the default calendar which we need to assign it. And whatever the calendar assigned in this particular coverage group will govern the receipt date for those warehouses. So let's say in this case, if for production, and let's try to understand this. Let's say for the production, we are the working days are not on 28th and 29th, and followed by it is closed on 5th and 6th. So let's say if you give a transport days as from 27th as 8 days, then primarily it will end up in 5th and 6th. Probably I think we need to give us 9 days, and then primarily it will look for the next appropriate day in which the warehouse will be operating, right? So let me save this, let me go back, and then you can do this in your demo instance once if the coverage group is assigned. And then I'll go back to the purchase order which we have created, procurement sourcing module, all purchase orders, and this time we'll see how the requested receipt date is calculated. So I'll open the same purchase order 151, and then I will remove the item ID, and then I'll add it again. I'll just remove the item ID, and then let me add the line. So once the item is added, like because the default transport days which is picked is 0. In the other tab, let me go to the another tab, and then let me now change the option of default from add to rail, but at this time I'm going to make this date as 9 days. So I'll make this as default, then I'll save this, then I'll go back to purchase order, I'll remove this line, then I'll add the line again. So once I give the item number as 1000, you can see that the system has calculated the requested receipt date, which is 7/7/2025. And even if you change the mode of delivery, it is going to change, the receipt date is going to change. But here the point to note is, actually we have given the not for truck but for rail, we have actually given as 9 days, but it has actually taken 10 days, because if you go to the calendars which we have assigned in the item, it is actually taken 7/7/2025 as our possible date to receive the material. Let me go to item coverage, then auto. Yeah, so this is the production calendar which we have assigned. And if we look at the working times, so here you can clearly see that the 5 and 6 are actually closed for receiving, and that's why it has just picked the date which is 7, which is the next open date which is allowed for the warehouse to receive it, right? So that's how you can try this out, and then various combinations of working days, and then based on which you can assign multiple coverage groups, and based on which you can practice in as you are trying it out in our system. So with that, I think we're coming to end of this episode part 3. I think we may take one more episode, part 4, in order to understand the couple of scenarios. How do we apply these concepts in your real-time business use cases? Make sure that you subscribe to the channel D365 Talks or follow my profile in LinkedIn. See you soon in part 4 of calculated requested receipt date and ship date. With that, we will be closing this topic. Thank you.